Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Red Devils TV. Now, we've had a bit of breaking news today that Manchester United have released a statement based on the Mason Greenwood situation. Now, it's kind of left fans quite antagonised because we've gone into the statement to read it and we've left as we went into it. And for me, it's very frustrating because the club have announced they've kind of clickbaited us with the Mason Greenwood situation. Obviously, it's a massive topic in the Manchester United fan base, but they've just left us antagonised as always, and they've just given us the same information that we already know. So, Marcus, our special guest for tonight, what are your thoughts on the statement with Mason Greenwood that Manchester United have made?
Yeah, it feels like a bit of a nothing statement. I mean, obviously, it's nice that they've addressed it and they've finally broken the silence. But you would think after this long, they would have at least come to some sort of internal decision. And the fact that they haven't, it's just one of two things. One, this whole situation is a lot more complicated than we think. Or two, as we all suspect, the club is just not really sure which way they want to go with this, which to me is very concerning because I think the general consensus, even though there's some people who obviously want Greenwood back, I think the vast majority of Manchester United fans don't want him back. I think even from the point of view of just the mental health of the player, it makes no sense to keep him here, right? Whichever angle you look at it, basically, just feels like, the decision is obvious. And I don't know how they haven't come to one.
Yeah, exactly. And with the Mason Greenwood situation, it's a very touchy topic because, again, personally, I've never been involved with a physical abuse or anything like that. The tapes have happened.
Yeah.
I've never been involved in that personally, but I know quite a few people that have been affected by that. So quite a lot of people find it quite a touchy topic. And again, I do apologise to anyone that doesn't like this type of topic, but we do just want to make the most breaking news. But as it stands, Manchester United have decided to announce to the fans that they haven't yet made an official agreement on what to do with Mason Greenwood. And for me, again, like I said, it's very frustrating because I don't know how long the club actually need now. If I don't know, Marcus, have you seen the training footage of Mason Greenwood about what's actually happened about him playing? I think it was in Chester. I think he was seen on a training pitch kicking a ball, and he looked very rusty. So, but it's not even about that whether he looks good or not. He could be playing as good as Cristiano Ronaldo, and I still wouldn't want him back because for me, it's best for all parties involved that Mason Greenwood, because with this situation, like you said, some fans do want him back, some fans don't. And no matter what, you're not going to please everybody. But for me, it's one of them situations where Manchester United are now pro with promoting the women's team. We're now pro with Black Lives Matter, we're pro with the LGBTQ community and stop physical violence and all that stuff. So I think that this would destroy the reputation of Manchester United if we was to bring something like this. I guess that maybe if you looked at this about 15, 20 years ago, obviously you had situations like John Terry in the past and situations like that where things can be brushed over, but again, fans don't forget. But I think in this modern day society, something like this just can't go without being brushed under the carpet almost. So what are your thoughts on that with the modern day society? Do you think that if this happened 15, 20 years ago, do you think that this would have been brushed under the carpet, or do you think it would have been as serious as it's been in this modern day?
I mean, it all depends, right? Because if you look at a lot of situations that have happened in football, a lot of it has just been allegations. The difference with Mason Greenwood, even though he wasn't obviously found guilty, is the fact that we've all seen the evidence, right? And that's the big difference. I mean, the easiest thing to compare it to is probably the Mendy situation. Mendy's recently, I believe his case is officially done now, and he won the case and he was found not guilty, right? That type of situation is very different to the Greenwood situation because we don't know what the evidence looks like. We haven't seen any public evidence. It's all hearsay, right? And so with Greenwood, it's kind of I think even if it did happen back in the day, let's just say hypothetically, before cell phones, before social media, there were still news tabloids, there were still newspapers. So imagine if the victim in question had gone to a newspaper and leaked the photos and it was on the front page of everybody's newspaper, right? It would still be different to the vast majority of these types of cases. And I think it wouldn't have been one that you could brush over. So yeah, it's a tricky one, man. It's not even about, for me, obviously I get why people are talking about that, but it's not even about the necessarily just the morals of this. Also just from a practical standpoint, right? It's just taking how you feel about it morally. even from a practical standpoint, if you're being as neutral as possible, it just doesn't make sense to keep him, man. It just doesn't, you know. Um, like I just think of like the amount of abuse that this guy's going to get. I just think of the what it's going to do to Manchester United's reputation as a brand. I just think about like financially, you know, do you really want to be keeping a player here who hasn't played football in such a long time? Probably won't really be a fan favorite. You know, it financially, you know, it just doesn't make sense from which way you cut it. You know.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, pal. And you've literally hit the nail on the head. And there's something that I wanted to address. And I thought about this because he asked one of my good friends, one of my best friends called Aidan. And obviously, when Mason Greenwood was playing football, my friend Aidan really liked him and he bought a shirt of Mason Greenwood's. And when it all came out, when the victim posted the thing overnight and everything, my friend obviously watched the videos, heard the voice notes and all that stuff, and he had the Mason Greenwood thing, and he personally picked off the number and his name. And then several hours later, the club announced that any fan with Mason Greenwood merchandise can get a full refund or choose a different shirt from a different player. Now, I'm surprised that no major article is actually talking about that, because if the club officially did that nearly 2 years ago, then surely that would hint at the fact that the club kind of think he's also guilty. The fact that they were kind of allowing fans to return shirts from previous seasons of Greenwood's because they wanted nothing to do with Mason Greenwood. But again, over the last 18 months, they've kept him on the payroll. They've kept him in contract because he is still in contract with Manchester United. But I definitely wouldn't be surprised that Manchester United statement, when they do decide to make the official announcement of Mason Greenwood, I'll not be surprised that they say that we're going to keep Mason Greenwood at the football club until his contract runs out. But then after his contract runs out, we want nothing to do with him, or they'll pay out his contract and let him be a free agent. I feel like that's going to be the actual agreement, because I feel like it only takes one player, one staff member to turn around and say that they feel uncomfortable with Greenwood being back at the football club, and that's when it becomes unbalanced situation. And obviously, Manchester United under Eric Ten Hag, the dressing room is finally becoming a much better environment. We obviously the last few seasons we've had players going out to the press, like the dressing room leaks, and it's been a toxic environment at Manchester United for so many years now. And I think now under Eric Ten Hag, that's now starting to become a much more positive environment. And for me, I feel like we just shouldn't be ruining that potential, in my opinion. But what do you think on that?
Yeah. I mean, whether people like it or not, Manchester United do have a legal obligation to, you know, they will have legal obligations in terms of the contract with Mason Greenwood, because he is an employee of the club, whether we like it or not, rightly or wrongly. There is a lot of legal stuff that we're not privy to, right? And this situation is very, very complex, because it's not just about Greenwood. A lot of people aren't really talking about the fact that there's also a victim in all of this, you know? So it's one of those tricky situations where I think you're probably actually right. I think that sounds like something that Manchester United will do in terms of just letting his contract run down. The interesting thing for me is, what does that really look like, though? Does he actually start games? Does he actually play? Does he train with the team? Or is it a case where technically on the books he's a Manchester United player, but they don't actually call him back to training, and he's essentially sitting at home on his couch earning whatever he was earning before this whole thing started? It's like there's just so many unknowns, and I don't want to speculate too much, again, because it's a very sensitive topic, and also just there's just so much we don't know. There's so much we can't factor in as well. For me, I just think that the fact that Manchester United haven't made a decision now is worrying. You know, I feel like they're going to keep him, if I'm being completely honest, and it's a shame.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that's where you could say there's kind of no morality in football anymore. And that's the kind of the upsetting thing, because obviously this is the game that we all love. And again, it's not even just that there's no morality anymore. It's like that players can't seem they can actually take accountability of when they go wrong anymore. And it's just like, all it is just a fine, or they post something on social media about how sorry they are, and then everyone brushes it under the carpet eventually. And for me, I feel like this is a situation that's so serious that it eventually does need to stop. But anyway, we'll move on. Actually, we've got a comment here just from Jobs for Football saying, what are your guys' thoughts on the victim and Mason having the baby together? So for me, I thought this is where the confusion comes to it, because surely if the victim was to post this and again, you'd have reports throughout the trial that Mason has broken his bail and been in contact with the victim. And this is
Yeah.
where the whole confusion happens, because this is where you get the conspiracy theorists are saying, oh, was it a role play type thing? Was it someone else? And this is where I'm like, I heard them tapes, whether it's Mason Greenwood or not, it was made and was framed to be Mason Greenwood. So whether the courts say that, because the courts never said he's innocent, they never said that. The actual case was dropped because the victim dropped all charges. So the court actually never officially said that he was innocent. So it was down to the victim who dropped the charges, who I believe thought that because she found out she was pregnant, and then she was like, okay, well, I'm a young girl, and I want to have him in my life, and I can't send him to prison. And I feel like this is just the way that, because I've had a lot of time to think about my reasons about Mason Greenwood and the situation, but I don't really like talking about it on my channel because, again, like you said, it's such a sensitive topic. But again, I do think I threw a massive spanner in the works when Greenwood and the victim came out and said that they are having a baby together. That, for me, that definitely threw a spanner in the works. But what were your thoughts when you first heard that news?
I mean, it was first, my initial response was that of confusion, but then beyond that, I don't really know, because for me, again, there's just so many unknowns. There's so many situations where something is happening within a particular family, and there's some families where, if you're a victim of something, you'll be supported. But then there's other families where, it will be a thing of, maybe it's your parents pressuring you to drop the case or drop the allegations because they want to maintain the harmony in the family at the expense of your trauma, which is wrong, obviously, right? So we just don't know what the case is, and I would feel very uncomfortable commenting and giving a solid, straight opinion on that when we just don't know, So I'm not going to lie, I don't know, and it is confusing because I mean, you also hear of the thing, what do they call it, Stockholm syndrome, where a person falls in love with their kidnapper, right? I'm sure there's a similar thing when it comes to this type of thing, right? You just don't know, man. You just don't know.
That's the thing. So we're going to move on from the Mason Greenwood situation because we have got other breaking news and transfer news. So Harry Maguire is set to stay at Manchester United now. Now, over the last 48 hours, the deal between Manchester United, West Ham and Harry Maguire have completely broken down. And the report's saying today, that, let me just get it up here, that Harry Maguire, or a source close to Harry Maguire, has come out and said that Maguire and West Ham never agreed personal terms. In fact, Harry Maguire and David Moyes have never made contact. The fee was agreed, but Harry Maguire wanted Manchester United to cover the wages he'll be losing in the transfer, which is a reported £10 million. Now, Marcus, I've not even asked you, what are your actual thoughts on Harry Maguire as an actual player? And then we'll ask you again for your opinion on the move to West Ham and why that's broken down. But what are your actual thoughts on Harry Maguire? Do you think he should stay and fight for his place, or do you think he's not good enough for this Erik ten Hag system?
I don't think he's good enough. So I think he should go. But I do find it funny that people are getting mad at him for wanting to stay and fight for his place. I get what people are saying about him having a big ego. I think that's definitely true. There were reports about him being surprised that he lost the captaincy. And I was like, bud, how are you surprised? You've been terrible for so long. So I get that. But I just think it's funny how, as a fan base, we love to shift the goalposts because, again, you see so many times when a player doesn't want to fight for their place and they want to leave, people chastise them and say, oh, you've got a bad mindset. We don't want you at Manchester United anyways if you don't want to fight for your place. And then when, a player we don't like actually says, hey, guys, I'm going to fight for my place. I'm going to train 3 times a week during preseason. I'm going to, actually try my best and put my head down. They get clowned. And if anybody doesn't believe me, think about what happened with Wan-Bissaka, right? A lot of people thought Wan-Bissaka was done after his that first 6-month stint where he didn't play under Erik ten Hag. And then there was those reports that Aaron Wan-Bissaka is working really hard on the technical side of his game. He's training, he's doing double training sessions basically because he's not playing as many games and blah, blah, blah. And eventually, he worked his way back into the team. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen with Maguire. I'm just saying it's funny how there's a double standard, But my opinion is he probably should leave. I don't see a future in which he actually gets better. I just think in terms of his attributes, in terms of his lack of pace, physicality, I think even on the ball, technically, he's not as great as some people make out. I think his career is done at Manchester United. And I'm stunned that he hasn't actually pushed for this move to West Ham because he'd be starting every week for them. And based on a lot of the reports, whether you believe them or not, if Moyes would have made him captain, that's a sweetener on the deal, So I don't get why he wouldn't go there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And obviously, the Wan-Bissaka comparison is absolutely brilliant because Wan-Bissaka was practically out the door, and the rejuvenation of Wan-Bissaka is absolutely incredible because Diogo Dalot was our starting right back. We were linked to players like Jeremy Frimpong and Pavard back in January. Then all of a sudden, Diogo Dalot gets injured in the World Cup. Wan-Bissaka starts playing for Manchester United, and then when Diogo Dalot comes back from his injury, he can't get in the team, and Wan-Bissaka has completely rejuvenated his career at Manchester United. And like you said, Harry Maguire probably won't have that same type of impact because again Harry Maguire is now 30, or is he 31 now? I'm not even that sure, but I know he's older than Varane by a couple of months, so it's just so hard for Maguire now. Like, he's not like he's a young 22-year-old centre back where you can develop him and maybe get him to increase his speed or increase his thinking, but the guy's 30 or 31, however old he is now, and for me I just believe that his time is done. And it's not even just the fact that he'll be starting for West Ham. I think Moyes' system would be perfect for West Ham, for Harry Maguire, because it's just the fact that it's a low block, much like it is with England. He'll have that extra security. They're making decent signings in Alvarez from Ajax. They've replaced a CDM missing position for Declan Rice. So for me, Harry Maguire, it would have been a perfect move for everybody. Manchester United get around £30 million when I value Maguire at about 20. So we're getting about £30 million for him. West Ham are getting an upgraded version on their centre back, and Harry Maguire plays a system that he would be comfortable in, and he won't be playing this high pressing system that he's not that he obviously can't he just can't do. But
also, can I just add, like, he would be playing at a club where he wouldn't get slated every week for putting in a bad performance. Now, that's not to say that West Ham fans wouldn't be rating, because they probably would, and West Ham fans probably do have standards, but the wider footballing community, the media, and also just the sheer size of Manchester United's fan base, that pressure wouldn't be there anymore. So, psychologically, physically, and in terms of your ability, it makes so much sense to just go to West Ham. You'll be playing, like you said, in a system that suits you. You'll be starting games regularly. You'll be held in a high regard as a player in terms of your importance on the manager's team selection. But then on top of that, psychologically, it's just a much better environment because you don't have the weight of playing for a club like Manchester United. I just think, it would be ludicrous to not push for that move. It reminds me of almost of Jesse Lingard when he, I don't know if it was the time when he was going to where he came back on loan from West Ham, or shortly before that, where he had an opportunity to move somewhere and he turned it down because he wanted to fight for his place. I'm trying to remember which.
It was after the loan spell. It was after the loan spell at West Ham, I'm pretty sure, because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said that he'd be part of the plans. Because I remember watching the interview with Jesse Lingard where he talks about his alcohol issues and stuff. And he turned around and said that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said that he'd be part of his plans, and then he wasn't. And that's when he left on a free transfer. He could have gone to West Ham because he had a brilliant loan spell. But I completely remember that. And
I saw that interview and I was just thinking to myself, mate, like, I respect it. Don't get me wrong. I respect a professional athlete's ability to say, hey, regardless of what other people think, regardless of what the haters think, I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to grind. But at some point, positivity can turn into delusion very quickly. There's a thin line between self-confidence and delusion. And I just think some of these players, man, they make baffling decisions. So, man.
Yeah, definitely. And that probably could be the fact that you could say they've actually made it. They are playing for Manchester United, the biggest club in England, arguably the biggest team in the world. And again, maybe some of them just don't want to leave. I mean, Harry Maguire, I think he has zero ambition. I think that he's more than happy to see out his contract on about 190 grand a week for whatever he's on, and just sit on the bench, much like Phil Jones did for years. But again, it will literally be another Phil Jones situation where he's on massive wages. We can't shift him, and we just see out his contract, and eventually he just leaves on a free transfer. But here's a question for you, Marcus. So obviously Saudi Arabia have been going absolutely mental this summer, obviously trying to bring in a load of aging players to try and increase their league's popularity. After signing Cristiano Ronaldo, recently signing Neymar, they're getting these big name players now. So, do you think Manchester United have been wrong to actually not abuse the Saudi Arabian? Obviously, Chelsea have done it, City have done it, Liverpool have done it. So, do you think Manchester United have kind of missed an opportunity to kind of offload our deadwood? You could say, obviously, we've got rid of Alex Telles, but we only got about $4 million for him. The deal with Eric Bailey, he's now staying at the club. We've now couldn't agree with Saudi Arabia on a fee for Eric Bailey, which I think think is impossible. I don't know how Manchester United are the first club to actually reject an offer from Saudi Arabia. I just don't understand it. So what are your thoughts? Do you think that Manchester United should have kind of abused the Saudi Arabian purchase hunger that they're showing, or do you think that we were wise not to sell Maguire or any of our other players to Saudi?
I mean, I don't want to be too cynical towards Maguire or McTominay or any other Manchester United player, but I honestly question whether or not there is genuine interest from Saudi Arabian clubs for any of our players, at least the ones that we've been, have been linked with moves, right? If Saudi Arabia came in and they wanted maybe Jadon Sancho or Rashford or Anthony, I would believe that, right? And if Manchester United turned it down, then I would understand, because those are important players for us. But I don't know. I just don't see a world in which a Saudi Arabian club signs someone like Harry Maguire. But they did sign a lot of players from Chelsea who were surplus to requirements. So it's an interesting one. I think most of the clubs that you mentioned there, especially Chelsea, were able to sell to Saudi Arabian clubs because they have good relationships with those clubs, And I'm not insinuating that Chelsea might be cheating or anything, because I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. In football, clubs have good relationships. Think about Manchester United with Dortmund, how many players we've signed from them. I mean, Kagawa, Sancho. Think about Manchester United with Ajax, right? Van der Beek is one. I'm trying to think of more players we've signed from there. I mean, we literally got their manager, Ten Hag, right? We have good relationships with certain clubs where that every few years we're going to sign them. I just don't think we have good relationships with any teams in Saudi Arabia. And maybe that's probably why we've missed the boat. I mean, the amount of players from Chelsea who've gone over that side, or at least have been linked with a move that side, is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And actually their ownership actually has ties to Saudi Arabia, financially. So
yeah, exactly.
It just makes sense for them to be able to do it. I don't think it makes as much sense for United. So I'm not too mad that we haven't been able to offload our players there. I am mad that we haven't been able to offload Maguire and McTominay to West Ham, though.
Yeah, and this is for me. I work in hospitality for my job, and I had a fan come in the other day, and he was asking, what are you excited for the football season return and stuff? I was like, yeah, I'm a United fan. Anyway, he turned around to me, I was like, so what do you think about Erik ten Hag? And I turned around to him and I was like, yeah, I think he's doing well. Obviously, he got us third in his first season. We got us the Carabao Cup and got us the FA Cup final. Yeah. So I was very impressed with that situation. But he turned around and said to me that he's not actually sold by Erik ten Hag yet. And I just turned around and I was like, I've never heard another fan talk about that. He just turned around and said that he thinks that because so many teams underperformed last season, Erik ten Hag kind of got lucky, and United just won games that we should have drawn or lost, and we kind of got lucky. So he wasn't convinced by Manchester United actually dominating games. And I kind of took a step back and I was like, you know what? You've actually got a bit of a point there, because obviously Chelsea had an off season. Tottenham had an off season with Conte getting sacked. Liverpool had a very off season. So you could say that 3 of Manchester United's rivals for top 4 were out of the game. And obviously that's where Newcastle, you could say the same argument for Newcastle about how they've just jumped straight to Champions League football. So for me, I wouldn't say that Erik ten Hag, I'm not actually sold by Erik ten Hag, because I think he's the perfect manager for our rebuild. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that Manchester United kind of got lucky last season due to other teams underperforming? Or do you think that Erik ten Hag is as good as a manager?
I don't agree with that sentiment. I understand the logic, but I don't agree with it, because I heard fans say the same thing when Jose was here, and I heard fans say the same thing when Oli was here. So it's like, how can you justify getting lucky that many times in such a short space of time? Like, Manchester United have gone through a massive transitional phase where we came off the back of our worst ever Premier League season in terms of points total. And so surely if a manager comes in and turns it around, not only should he be given credit for that, but it's like, regardless of what's happening around him, you should say, okay, well, yes, Chelsea have gone through their transition, Liverpool have gone through their transition, whatever. We were also going through our own transition. So does that not count for something? People are pretending like Ten Hag's been here a while and he's had some sort of head start. Like the other teams had one arm tied behind their back, which I don't think is fair, because I would actually argue that Ten Hag had one arm tied behind his back in the sense that he had to deal with a lot of off-field drama with Cristiano Ronaldo. He's obviously had to deal with this Greenwood situation, even though he had nothing to do with it and he inherited the situation. He's had to deal with the Maguire situation, getting asked questions about Maguire literally every press conference, even though the guy's only started 4 Premier League games since Ten Hag has come. So I don't know. Like I said, I get the logic and I get where people are coming from, but I don't agree with it simply because I've just heard it before. And I think every time, a manager comes in, people will always try to find a way to discredit it. And I don't think everyone who says that is coming from a cynical place. I think some people genuinely just aren't sold, which is fine. People are allowed to have that opinion. But I do feel like there is a percentage of fans who just say that because they always say that, you like, there's just certain accounts on Twitter. Like if you've been just observing them from a long time, you can almost predict when they're going to put out certain opinions because they've been doing it for so many years, So I don't know. It's not one I agree with.
This is why everyone watching right now, go and subscribe to Marcus's channel, because this is an absolute spot on statement. And this is why I love getting people on this channel, because you can interact with fans who have different opinions. And like this, Marcus has literally just said a spot on opinion, which I personally agree with. And I think a lot of people watching would agree with as well. And this is why you should definitely go and subscribe to Marcus. But honestly, Marcus, you've just hit the nail on the head there. I can't actually add anything to that. So again, like you said, Erik ten Hag, you just actually can't judge him in a way, because the fact is that, like you said, that fans are trying to make excuses that all these other teams are going through transitional phases. Manchester United were literally, you wouldn't think that Manchester United got, was it 54 points? Was it that previous season or something like that?
I can't remember. Let me just
check. I know it was in the 50s. They had 50 points, whatever we got. But again,
it was a terrible season.
It was an awful season. And I mean, you even think about it, we had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who got sacked when we lost, I think it was like 4-1 to Watford. And kind of ironic, I believe it was Donny van der Beek who scored in that play that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer never played, who sealed off the last goal of his career. And then you had Ralph Rangnick. I mean, Michael Carrick, he did all right. I mean, he's doing all right for Middlesbrough now as well. But then we brought in Ralph Rangnick, who was just sold to, it was literally like putting a plaster over an open wound. It was absolutely terrible. But anyway, this is the thing I kind of really wanted to talk about. Now, Sofyan Amrabat, a Manchester United link and midfield top target. It seems like he's now on his way to Liverpool, which is crushing for me, because we've lost out on Darwin Núñez to Liverpool. We've lost on Cody Gakpo to Liverpool. Now it's looking like Sofyan Amrabat. Now, again, we've had personal terms agreed with Sofyan Amrabat for now 3 weeks. It's absolutely ridiculous how we haven't actually officially got a deal done yet. But Liverpool are going to be pushing for a holding midfielder now. They've lost on Lavia to Chelsea. They've also lost Caicedo to Chelsea. I watched your video on why Caicedo would revolutionise Liverpool. It was a very good video, Marcus. But again, the fact that Liverpool have now lost their 2 priority targets, no doubt now they're looking at what other teams that are our rivals are linked to. Manchester United, they've got midfield issues. Who are they linked to? Oh, Sofyan Amrabat. They need to replace that. They're also linked to that Doucouré from Crystal Palace. But Amrabat, I feel like that. I mean, the report when we were first linked to Amrabat, the reports were that that his dream is to play in La Liga, because obviously being Moroccan, that's just on the border of Spain. It's always been his dream to play in La Liga. But when Premier League clubs have been coming in for him, he won't say no. And Manchester United have had personal terms agreed with him for over 3 weeks now. And it's just Manchester United that just can't agree a deal. And this is where it comes to sell to buy. And this is the issue now, because we're selling players for such low fees. Harry Maguire is now not going to West Ham. Dean Henderson looks like he's going to be staying and being our backup goalkeeper. This is the frustrating thing about why Manchester United. It's like I said, we couldn't literally, Manchester United, we couldn't sell a black cat to a witch. That's the best way I could do it. That's the best way what we could do it. It's Halloween night. We literally could take a load of cats from the shelter, try and go to these pumpkin houses that you see on the cartoons and stuff, and the witches would just be like, no, I'm all right, thank you. Like, that's literally what it's like. And it's so infuriating, because the Glazers are like, oh, we're great owners, I don't understand why Manchester United fans actually protest about us, because you only spend money that the club generates. You've not once took anything out your own pocket. In fact, you take money out of the club to put in your own pocket. And this is the frustrating thing about everything. And you know what? John Murtaugh, I feel like he's got one arm tied behind his back. The Glazers have got the sword. They're like it's the Pirates of the Caribbean, just pushing him off when he's about to get eaten by the Kraken or something. It's absolutely infuriating. And again, it hurts more because it's Liverpool. This is why I'm getting so antagonised by it, because I can't be bothered losing another player to Liverpool. And Sofyan Amrabat, I saw him at the World Club, and after that performance from Morocco, I tuned into a few Fiorentina games for when they played Atalanta because I wanted to scout Hojlund as well, because obviously we're linked to
Yeah.
as well. And that game, Amrabat was unbelievable. Obviously, it ended up a draw that game, but Amrabat again, it was unbelievable the way he breaks up the play, the progressive passes, the way he gets stuck into challenges. He's the perfect number
Yeah.
8. And for me, he
And
reminds me so much of Gundogan for City. Obviously, he's now
yeah,
gone to Barcelona, but he'd be an unreal signing for us. And right now, for me, the midfield looks very unbalanced with Mount, Fernandes, and Casemiro. But anyway, I've ran enough now. I'll let you take the reins and let me know your thoughts on this situation.
yeah, it's a tricky one because, like, obviously, I feel like when it comes to the Amrabat situation, it would be a disaster for us to lose Amrabat. It would be a disaster because for me, like the Mason Mount signing and how I felt about the Mason Mount signing always depended on us getting Amrabat, right? Like, it's gone from being a decent summer that I can accept, that I can live with, to a terrible summer if we don't get Amrabat, because I just feel like he's such an important player for us. And obviously, like you say, going to Liverpool is just it just adds salt in the proverbial wounds. Like that just makes it even worse. So I don't know how to feel. You know, Amrabat is going to be, he's one of those players that I can't really think of many other players, midfielders who fit his profile that are available right now that we can actually go in for. And this is why the Maguire situation, the McTominay situation kind of pisses me off even more, because I feel like the reason why we haven't got the Amrabat deal done, and this is me just speculating, I haven't actually like followed the news on the Amrabat deal because I'm kind of over it. I just feel like the reason why we're not going to get this deal done is probably because at the end of the day, we aren't able to balance the books. I saw a comment earlier about Manchester United not being able to balance the books and how you got to feel sorry for Ten Hag because he must be ripping his hair out. First of all, he doesn't have hair. He's just like me, you know, he doesn't have hair. But yeah, if he did have hair, he definitely will be pulling it out, man. Like you do have to feel sorry for him because Amrabat is one of those players that would have solved so many issues for us in that team. You know, I watched that game against Wolves, and again, I don't think Mount and Bruno specifically were to blame for that performance. I think just collectively, the front six was terrible as a whole, as a collective. But if we had Amrabat in that game for either one of Mount or Bruno, I think the performance would have been a lot better in terms of the ball retention in the final third. Having somebody who can play either next to Casemiro or slightly more advanced than Casemiro, and just, you know, play through, you know, what was a very tight and compact Wolves team. And, you know, man, losing him would be such a shame, honestly.
Definitely. And the fact is as well that he's only reported fee about £30 million. So it's not even like he's 50, 60 million.
Yeah.
And so many people are now saying that Onana for Everton would be a great deal. If we can't agree a fee for £30 million for Amrabat, we're not going to get Onana. It's just spin, spin, spin. And that's what I'm saying. When Manchester United about to lose on another target, we're linked to somebody else, like it miraculously just appears. It's like when you lose your teeth when you were a kid and then magically the tooth fairy just came and gave you some money for your teeth. Like it's ridiculous. And like you said, salt in the wounds because it is Liverpool as well. But Ryan has put a comment that I wanted to address, and he says that Amrabat wants United, not Liverpool, though, so that will be a factor. I do agree on that, but it's also the fact that he's going to choose Liverpool over Fiorentina, and Liverpool will probably offer him around the similar wages what Manchester United will be, and he will want a Premier League move. And Amrabat has the quality to move to there. So I don't think it's anything about loyalty. I don't think Amrabat grew up in Morocco thinking, I want to play for Manchester United one day. I don't think that crossed his mind at all. He just really wants to move.
It only becomes a factor if on the day Liverpool put down a contract, Manchester United put down a contract, and he's got to pick between the two. Definitely. My suspicion is if Liverpool come in, they're going to get the deal done quicker, and Amrabat's going to be sat there going, well, do I accept the Liverpool offer now, or do I wait until possibly the 1st of September when the window's closed, then only Manchester United come and offer me a contract and I can only join 6 months from now, right? So that's something we have to bear in mind, is like, a player can say, yeah, I want to play for Manchester United in the Premier League, but at the end of the day, money talks, and, you know, players have obligations, you know, they have families to look after. So it's not a case of like, oh, you know, no thanks Liverpool, no thanks Chelsea, I'm just going to wait until Manchester United get their act together and come in for me. You know, that's my worry. I think if we both had the deal done and the contract was on the table and all Amrabat had to do is choose, I think he would pick United. But I don't think we're there yet, you know, because I think if we were, we'd know. So I don't know. There's something about the Amrabat deal that just seems off, and Liverpool coming in after losing Caicedo and Lavia, it doesn't give me much hope as a United fan.
And the fact is as well that Liverpool have literally just gone out of the way to spend nearly over £100 million on Caicedo. So they've got the money. And this is where it becomes intimidating now to me, because Amrabat could you imagine a midfield three of Amrabat, Szoboszlai and McAllister? That would be so good. The balance would be unreal. It would literally be like
and you've got Trent.
Again. And you've got Trent as well. That inverted midfielder. It would be sickening. But anyway, Ryan says here that this will hurt if he goes there. But yeah, with Sofyan Amrabat, this is where I'm getting really upset about it and very intimidated by it, because again, it is Liverpool. It is just very frustrating. And as Ryan's just said here, saying, can I ask, I thought the deal with Fiorentina had been agreed a month ago. It doesn't make sense that we have heard no further updates since regarding the situation. It was the personal terms that were agreed. Manchester United agreed to the contract and everything with Amrabat, and that's what was happened. But we never agreed a fee with Fiorentina. The reported fee was around 25 million euros to 30 million euros, and Manchester United have not actually put in an official bid, and that's why the deal hasn't been done yet. So
good. So usually what clubs will do is oftentimes they'll agree personal terms with the player, because there's no point if I go to a football club and I say, hey, I want to sign your player, and then we go through all the turmoil of negotiating, and then only after we're done and we've agreed a price, I go to the player and say, hey, we want to sign you, and the player's like, no thanks. It's like, so why did I do all that work? So oftentimes clubs will go with the player first. They'll agree personal terms. And the thing is, what a lot of football fans don't realize is that sometimes players agree personal terms with multiple clubs. So a player might say, I want to come to your club, but realistically speaking, no player is going to intentionally reject a move to another club on the off chance that, Manchester United or any other club they prefer is going to seal the deal sometime in the future, when there's no guarantee. It's like, it reminds me of Harry, like, I know this is completely unrelated, but remember that story about Harry Kane having a gentleman's agreement with Daniel Levy about, when Daniel Levy supposedly had a gentleman's agreement in place with Harry Kane that if a club came in for him, he would sell him. And that club was supposed to be Manchester City, and the deal just never happened. It's like, as a player, you can't trust the words of an owner, even if that owner's you at your own football club. You've got to put things on paper,
Exactly. And that's obviously the massive frustrating thing about everything. But again, can you see Manchester United raising the funds? Because obviously you mentioned before about us having to sell to buy. So can you see Manchester United actually selling any other players to actually get the money for Fiorentina? Because again, you think back to last season, Manchester United were linked to Adrian Rabiot. All the fans were protesting about it, moaning about it on social media. Then all of a sudden, because the Glazers had apparently no money to spend, then all of a sudden, bang, £60 million on Casemiro. There you go. And do you think that could happen? A situation like that, or just a one-off thing?
I think we will spend money, but if my fear is if we don't get Amrabat, a player who we've been looking at all summer long, it's like, who are we going to sign? Because we've been down this road before, where when Manchester United go for an alternative target and nobody knows, and it's last day of the window or last week of the window, it's never someone that we're all excited about as a fan base, right? Like, I trust Ten Hag, but Amrabat's the guy, man. Amrabat's the guy. So if we don't get Amrabat, I still think we will sign a midfielder. I just don't think it'll be a very good midfielder. I think it would be a very ill-planned and desperate signing, and it would be such a shame if that did happen. Yeah.
And that's the thing, like you said, I mean, I've said it as well many times on this channel, but Amrabat would be the perfect sign, and there's no one else that I want. I can't actually, because the fact is as well is that the reason why it's a perfect deal, because it reminds me so much of the Varane signing. Like Varane, yes, despite his injury issues, you should get Varane. We got Varane for, what was it, £34 million? If we could get Amrabat for around £28 million, he's only, he's mid-20s, he's about 25, 26. So much like Andre Onana, who's only 26, 27 himself, you get him in his prime. Amrabat would be absolutely brilliant for us. I believe he's 25, 26, Amrabat.
Yeah, he's 26.
He's 26. So again, you get an absolute juggernaut in midfield, a proper midfielder with an actual engine. Like McTominay, he's got like a Fiat 500 engine. You've got Sofyan Amrabat, who's got like a Mustang engine, who's going to be roaring through that midfield. He's going to be pressed. He's going to be pressing. He's going to and again, if you haven't seen any Marcus,
he's a really hard worker.
Exactly. And that's what Eric Ten Hag wants. He wants hard-working players in his system. And if you haven't seen Marcus's video, go check him out, because in his most recent video, he talks about the tactical analysis of the Wolves. He talks about where we went wrong in the Wolves game, about how our midfield was just left exposed, and that Manchester United should look at either signing a player like Amrabat to keep that balance between Casemiro and the forward line, or a fullback like Luke Shaw or Wan-Bissaka should be becoming an inverted to help us with that space. And I completely agree with you on that sense. But this is why I say, with Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes, I love both players. Mason Mount, I feel like, will be a good player for us, but I really don't understand the signing, because Mason Mount, we've given him the number 7 shirt, we've signed him for a high fee, and he's not going to be happy sat on the bench. And we can't bench our new captain in Bruno Fernandes. He won't bench Antony because Mason Mount's not an actual winger, and he won't bench Marcus Rashford or Højlund. So this is why I think the signing doesn't make much sense to me. And Amrabat would bench Mason Mount or Bruno Fernandes, but it's just completely incompetent, and I don't understand the Mason Mount signing. But again, I mean, go on, let you finish.
I can sort of understand the Mason Mount signing, but the thing with the Mason Mount signing is I understand it, but I don't 100% agree with it, because you can understand something and not agree with it. But I understand it because I feel like off the ball, I get it, right? Eric Ten Hag wants this team that presses really high up the pitch. He wants his midfielders to work really hard off the ball, suffocate the opposition high up. Mason Mount's your guy. He's a guy who listens to the coach's instructions. He works really hard, and he is obviously physically a lot better than someone like Christian Eriksen, right? So I would argue he's an upgrade on Eriksen in terms of off the ball and physicality, right? So I get that, but it's on the ball where I have massive question marks. And I think if you don't sign another a midfielder, then you're basically relying on Mount, and he just hasn't looked good. Now, yes, it's only one game plus preseason, so I'm going to give Mount time, and I'm not going to overreact, but it's not looking good. It's just not looking good. And Mount is the marquee signing, whether people like it or not. The club gave him the number 7 jersey, so whether you like Mason Mount or not, that's Ten Hag's guy. So that's where I'm conflicted with it, because I trust Ten Hag's talent ID, but at the same time, there's a part of me that's just screaming okay, Mount needs to, he needs to start showing me the goods soon. Otherwise, I just don't get it,
Yeah, and I feel like that with the going back to the Amrabat situation, that it is Manchester United's player to lose almost. It is that sense. He wants Manchester United. What he likes that we've got Champions League football. He wants to play at the highest level, and that's what he wants. But Fabrizio Romano has just tweeted that Liverpool have submitted a formal bid to sign Japanese midfielder Waratu Endo from, I believe it's Stuttgart in Germany. So that's kind of a positive you could take away from it, that I do know that he is more of a box-to-box midfielder, but can play defensive role. So that's kind of good news that they are spending money on players away from Amrabat. But United just need to get the stuff together. They need to get their shit together, and you need to just sign Amrabat, because realistically, I don't want to lose another player to Liverpool. I don't want to lose out on a player like Amrabat, because much like the Højlund situation, I know that if Manchester United had the midfield, whether you want to say Dalot or Wan-Bissaka, but this is my starting 11. You've got Amrabat, you've got Onana, who will help us play out from the back, who's going to revolutionise Manchester United when it comes to our playing style. You've got the back 4 of Shaw, Varane, Martinez, and then Dalot or Wan-Bissaka, whoever your preferred right back is. You've got Casemiro, an absolute veteran, an elite holding midfielder. You've got Amrabat, who is just an absolute engine in midfield. Then you've got Mount or Bruno Fernandes as your number 10, who's the more attacking midfielder. Then you've got Antony or Sancho on the right, Højlund through the middle, and Marcus Rashford or Garnacho on the left. For me, that is a very threatening starting 11. And that would completely revolutionise us. And the fact is as well, I don't understand why Manchester United held out £40 million for Scott McTominay when West Ham were offering around £35 million. I really don't understand it, but I get it as well at the same time. Like I said, I don't understand it, but I don't agree with it, but I also don't really understand it as well. That Manchester United, we can literally replace Scott McTominay for a player who's cheaper and better than him. And I just don't understand it. I just really don't understand it.
I honestly thought I didn't think the Mount signing was to replace McTominay for footballing reasons, but when we signed Mason Mount, I was like, the one positive thing about this signing is that he is homegrown. So you don't really need to keep a player like McTominay around anymore for squad reasons, right? Because you've essentially got a British player in, and you've got that homegrown, status, whatever it's called, like the rules surrounding the homegrown players. You've got that checked off the box. So again, I don't understand why we're still keeping McTominay around, right? Like what logical reason is there? Because beforehand, I got the homegrown stuff. We need, English player or British players in the team, but we don't now. We don't, either him or Maguire have to go. So it's very interesting, and this is why someone like Amrabat would be so important. And the another thing about Amrabat is, for me, it's not that there aren't other players out there that I would get, even though a lot of them have already gone to rival teams. It's just more that he clearly is the guy that we've been scouting for months, and he's the guy that we've been looking at. So to see him go to Liverpool after Nunes, I know most of us don't want Nunes in hindsight because he hasn't performed for Liverpool, but Nunes, Gakpo, and a handful of other players. I think even someone like, I don't think we're actually in for Fabinho, but I remember a lot of Manchester United fans were gutted when Liverpool got Fabinho, because that's a player some of our fan base wanted. It would be another top talent going to Liverpool that we've all as a fan base said, please just get this player. It would be so sad.
Definitely, and I completely agree with you. But anyway, this video's gone a lot longer than what we originally planned for. I really appreciate everyone in the comments. Make sure everyone goes and subscribes to Marcus. He makes very good footballing content, not just based on Manchester United. So definitely go and check him out, and he definitely deserves a lot more subs because he's absolutely incredible with high quality content. So anyway, Marcus, just want to let everyone know where everyone can find you.
Yeah, well, this is my handle, TRXPLEM on Twitter, and that's my YouTube channel as well. So if you want to give me a follow, check it out there, man. And I appreciate you getting me on the show.
No worries. I really appreciate you coming on. I've had a very great conversation with you. It's been absolutely brilliant. But anyway, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We will be live tomorrow. It is also my birthday, so you've got to appreciate the grind. So subscribe. I am turning 20, so I'm no longer 19. So yes, thank you everyone for watching, and